Seconds. Oh, and we are live with Mamavation TV. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Segedy, and tonight's going to be a special topic. I don't know if a lot of you know about this or know about my past, but we have a guest on tonight. Her name is Heather, and she is a mesothelioma cancer survivor. And the reason that's so important to me is because my father died of mesothelioma, which is exposure to asbestos. It happens in all kinds of industries, and Heather was exposed the same way that I was exposed as a child. So I'm going to let her tell you guys a little bit about her story, and then we're going to talk all about mesothelioma, asbestos, where it can be in your house, where it can be in your life, different types of things that you just need to know, and what you can do about them. So I just wanted to remind you guys this week that before we get too crazy, that we have a Twitter party this Wednesday with Healthy Child, Healthy World, and we're looking for the Blogger of the Year. So if you want to be considered the Blogger of the Year by Healthy Child, Healthy World, make sure to cruise over to my site and pick up the link on how to apply. And then we're going to have a party on Wednesday with Baby Gannix, and they're going to be giving away all kinds of personal care products, all kinds of cleaning products, lotions, all kind of fun stuff. Not just stuff for babies. I mean, a lot of stuff for grown-ups, too, because Baby Gannix I use all the time as well. And then the following Wednesday, we're going to be doing a Nutiva Twitter party, and then the weekend after that, another Twitter party for Organic Valley. But there's also Organic Valley is going to be taking one blogger with me and my husband to England, all expenses paid. Wait, just so you know, all expenses paid to England for like 5 days. And if you want to tack on an additional, like, you know, excursion, which my husband and I are doing, to just kind of get wild in England, they're going to allow you to do that as well. So if you want to go to England, all expenses paid, check out some organic dairy farms in the valley where cheddar was invented like 800 years ago. Apply for that one. That's on Mamavation.com too. We got a lot of exciting things going on. Now that I was talking about all these exciting things, it's time for us to get a little serious. So I want to introduce you guys to Heather. Heather and I have talked on the phone, but we have a lot in common. But she's a cancer survivor. I am not. So she's got an amazing story. I want her to tell you guys all about it. Make sure to hang out in the chat room. Give us questions if you have questions for her, or just, you know, thoughts of encouragement or anything like that. But this is going to be, I don't know, guys, this is either going to be a really amazing show for me, or it might be a little bit of an emotional show for me. It just depends. I'm not sure. So, but either way, Heather is so incredibly welcome here. You are welcome in our community. I just want you to know that, you know, your story is amazing. I personally don't know anybody who has survived mesothelioma, so just the fact that you're walking around just, you know, makes me kiss the ground and say thank you. And why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody about you?
Well, thank you for having me. This is such an honor, and it's a lot of fun. This is such a new experience for me, so I really am enjoying this. My name is Heather Von St. James, and like Leah said, I am a mesothelioma survivor. I was diagnosed in late 2006, November 21st, actually 2005, excuse me. And the thing about the diagnosis, it was just 3 months after my baby was born. So I'm a new mom, had a C-section, coming off a C-section, and I just didn't feel well. I was tired. I was short of breath, I was anemic, I was losing weight hand over fist. And a lot of these things could have been written off as postpartum. And I'm really, really thankful that I had a doctor who wouldn't just take that as an answer. It's like, no, there's something more serious going on. And after a number of tests, they found out that I had fluid around my left lung and did a chest x-ray to find out where it was coming from. And that's when they found a mass on the lower part of my left lung. We did a CT scan and a biopsy the next day, sent the pathology off, and at first the pathology department at the local hospital, which is a really, really good hospital, couldn't believe it. They're like, no, we need another opinion, so they sent it off to Mayo, which is only, you know, about an hour and a half away from where I live, because I'm in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and they came back with a confirmation of the diagnosis, malignant pleural mesothelioma. And at that time, Mayo Clinic had only ever heard of one other woman my age, about my age, getting the cancer. So it's incredibly rare cancer. About only 3,000 people a year get it. And most of the people that get it do work in the trade industries, have worked with asbestos, construction, auto mechanics, mining, that sort of thing. So to be a young woman at age 36 being diagnosed was very rare. So upon my diagnosis, I was given 3 options. And the scariest thing was my doctor looked at me point blank and said, if you don't do anything, you have about 15 months to live. So hearing this, thinking about my newborn baby at home, I was in shock. And then he said, but there's, chemo and radiation that you can do, which might buy you up to 5 years. Or you can do this groundbreaking surgery that's being done in Boston by this Dr. David Sugarbaker. And it's called an extrapleural pneumonectomy. Basically what they'll do if you're a candidate is they'll take your left lung and hopefully that will cure the cancer. And without batting an eye, my husband looks at me and he goes, get us to Boston. So 12 days later, we were in Boston for basically to see if I was a candidate for the surgery, and, praise God I was. We caught the cancer early, and it was contained to my left lung. It hadn't spread to the lymph nodes or anything. And so I was scheduled for surgery on February 2nd, 2006. So Lily would have been 6 months old when I had my surgery. And so we flew to Boston again the end of January, and I had my lung removed on Groundhog's Day. And because of that, I nicknamed my tumor Puxatawny Phil. Because I've got this tumor in my body. I need to make friends with it. And if I poke fun at it, it takes kind of that fear away.
Right,
so I nicknamed my tumor Puxatawny Phil. Hey Phil, how you doing today? Please don't grow. Checking with it every day until my surgery. And the morning of my surgery, I spoke to the surgeon and I was like, okay, if the tumor sees its shadow, does that mean 6 more weeks of recovery? How does that work? And he looked at me like, huh? I'm like, it's pretty hard. And then he's like on board after that. So that's how we dealt with it, is through humor and through, poking fun, because you can either do that or you can go crazy. And we also have now nicknamed the day that I lost my lung leaving day, because my lung left. So, and it works, and instead of mourning the day that I lost my lung, we now celebrate. So every year, the first weekend of February, we have a big party to celebrate Lung Leaving Day, and we use it as a fundraiser for mesothelioma research. And it's become this humongous party attended by like 80 of our closest friends. So it's become something more than just a surgery day. But in all seriousness, it did help take the fear of the situation down, and it helped me deal with the seriousness and the levity of the situation. So during my surgery, I had an experimental technology done called intraoperative heated chemotherapy, where basically as you're cut open, they pump in a heated chemo wash, where it's heated up to 140 degrees, pump it in, wash it around. They call it the shake and bake, because they literally walk you back and forth as you've got this solution in your chest, and it comes in direct contact with all of the affected tissue. And the theory behind it is it kills on a molecular level, so they get everything that they can see with their eye, and then this helps kill on more of a cellular, invisible level. And I really attribute that to my long-term survivorship. And
did that feel weird? Did it feel like there was something hot in your chest? Did it hurt?
I don't remember. I was sleeping. I don't remember. But it was
stoned out of your mind.
I was in La La Land. Like 140 times stronger than what they can give you intravenously. So it's an incredibly powerful chemotherapy solution. I was lucky I never did lose my hair during chemo, so it was kind of like that. No. And being a former hairdresser, bald was the only hair color I never had, so I kind of wasn't minding losing my hair. It's like, well, we'll see. I can rock a bald head. But no, I did not lose my hair. It doesn't cause hair loss. It's the one saving grace. But following surgery, I recovered in Boston for a month. And this whole time, my 6-month-old baby was living with my parents in South Dakota, my childhood home. And so I spent her whole 6th month of life away from her, and she was raised by my parents. And those are choices, you know, as a mom that you're forced to make. Short-term pain for long-term gain is what I've said. And it hurt at the time, and it was sad. But, you know, I basically experienced Lily growing through photographs that my mom would send. And these were the days before Facebook, before, you know, Caring Bridge was just getting started. Care pages, all that sort of stuff was just getting started. Facebook was non-existent, and the technology was a lot different, even though it's only 8 years ago.
Wow.
Technologically, it was, you know, eons ago.
That does just kind of blow my mind that Facebook wasn't even around 8 years ago.
Yeah. So, you know, communicating was through email, through phone calls, and my mom would, you know, download these pictures, and my husband would go to the community family room at the hospital and print out pictures of Lily and bring me these grainy black and white pictures of my baby, but that's how I saw her grow for a month. And I had this big stack of, you know, photocopies basically in my hospital room that I would look through every day, and the nurses would come in and be like, "Let me see your baby." And to see her change in that month was amazing. But so I stayed in Boston for a month, and then I was able to move in with my parents for a couple months and recover, because there was no way I could take care of Lily on my own.
Right.
And, did chemotherapy and radiation after that, and almost a year to the date of my diagnosis, I finished up all my treatment. So, and that was 7 years ago, and here I am.
Did they give you like a clean bill of health right afterwards?
Yeah, they're like, well, right now there's no evidence of disease, and they call it NED. So, NED. No evidence of disease. And they're
NED,
like,
and NED and what else?
NED. No evidence of disease.
No, I know, but you've got a NED and you got a Phil.
Oh, NED
wasn't a Phil.
Yeah, Ned replaced Phil.
Right.
So.
You're getting around, huh, Heather?
But yeah, so that was, you know, like I said, 8 years ago, or 7 years ago, and I continue to go back to Boston for checkups every 6 months. In the beginning, it was every 3 months, and then it was 4 months, and now it's 6 months. And I will probably be doing this for the rest of my life, as long as that is. So I live my life in 6 month increments.
6 month increments.
Yep.
So tell everybody how you were exposed, or at least how you think you were exposed.
You know, the best that we can tell is my dad was a construction worker when I was growing up, and he was a volunteer firefighter. I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, and a lot of the work that he did was renovation and demolition. So he would go into all these old buildings and tear out existing ceiling tiles and floor tiles and insulation, and he would tear into like boilers and tear out the insulation on these boilers, all places that were just full of asbestos. And he would bring home, you know, the asbestos on his clothes, or he would clean up from drywall sanding. When he started, that's what the grunt work was, you know, hey, go clean up this drywall. And I remember him coming home with this gray, crusty coat, and his car was always dusty. And I remember couple times he'd come home, and his beard was just full of you know, gray dust. And we didn't know the dangers. It was just dust. And I would hug him when he came home. I would wear his coat to go outside and feed my rabbits, or go get the mail because I didn't want to get my coat dirty. And I loved wearing my dad's coat because it was his, and it was like wearing a hug. And it was through that dust and through that exposure is where the asbestos came from.
So when you said you were one of the only 2 instances that they'd ever heard of someone your age getting it, I'm assuming the other person was kind of similar.
Yeah, and since then I've met hundreds of young women and men who have been exposed through secondhand exposure like I was, through their father's work clothes, whether it be construction, mining, you know, brake jobs, truckers, whatever. So it's very common.
And did your father ever get sick, or no, it was just you?
Well, my dad did pass away February of this last year, February 27th, which was the day after his birthday. He was diagnosed with kidney cancer in November and passed away in February.
Do they think it was related to the asbestos, or do they not know?
They don't know, but there is kind of a tentative link between asbestos exposure and kidney cancer. So I'm not convinced that it wasn't part of the cause. And we'll never know, but I have my suspicions. And
Right.
I can't prove it, but...
So the difference is that it went to his kidneys as opposed to you, it went to your lungs.
Yeah. The lining. Mesothelioma is the cancer of the lining of the organs. Mine was the lining of my lung, and there's also the abdomen, which is the peritoneal area, and then there's pericardial, which is the heart. And there's also like a rarer subset, which is testicular, which obviously only men get, which is the lining of the testicles. So there's those types of mesothelioma. It's cancer of the lining of the organs. Yeah.
My father was exposed at the railroad, and so he was a locomotive engineer for, oh my God, I want to say 30, 40 years or something like that. And but before he was an engineer, he was what they called a hopper. And the hopper would take the train when it's broken, I guess you would say, and reel it into the warehouse where the mechanics would fix it, right? And if you can imagine this big, huge warehouse, you know, with all these trains in it, but it's kind of cut off, you know, so it's not really ventilated very well. So most of the men that died from mesothelioma that worked on the railroad were mechanics. Or hoppers. They weren't railroad engineers, but because my father was exposed as a hopper, that's probably where, you know, he got it. And same idea, you know, he would come home with a big brown leather jacket every day, and I loved his jacket. We actually still have it somewhere. I think my brother has it or something like that. I'm not so sure that's very smart, but at least it's got my brother's house, not my house. But yeah, but the same idea. It was like, you know, it's like wearing a hug, right? And you never would have thought in a million years. Well, my dad had no idea that it was happening. What he thought it was that he felt like someone was sitting on his chest, you know, and he was just couldn't get rid of this cough, and he kept coughing and coughing. Well, my dad, he also loved woodworking, and so in his spare time, he had all these saws, and he would, you know, remodel the kitchen for my mom and do all these amazing things and build cabinetry and stuff like that. And he thought, I must have just inhaled some dust, some sawdust. And so they eventually, they did scans on him, and then they did exploratory surgery, and they opened him up, and they just found it everywhere. And so they closed him up, and they just said 6 months if you're lucky.
Oh,
and that's kind of how it, yeah. And so when he got that, I was actually 3 months pregnant when we got that news. And so, you know, my dad, he was I 3 months pregnant or 4? I was pregnant. So when he was just bound and determined to see his first grandson. So he lived until the baby was about 3 months old, and then he passed away. And it was tough. But I mean, the hard thing is, I know you fought, and I'm so glad you did because you survived. But for me, you know, when they did, he didn't qualify for any special, you know, surgeries or anything like that. And I really felt like the chemo and the radiation robbed him of some time that he would have had, because it was just awful, you know, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
That's a choice. It's like, do you take quality or quantity? And a lot of times the chemotherapy and the radiation do diminish the quality of the time you have left, and it's a very intense personal decision. Right. So yeah, I don't remember much of that year. I always say Lily's first year of life was a blur. I don't remember a lot of it. So it was spent on the couch.
It's amazing what you can do psychologically if you have something to look forward to, because you know, you're looking forward to your life with your child. My father was looking forward to just getting to that point. And it's pretty amazing, though, because of this whole thing. You know, I mean, I quit my job and I took care of my dad for, you know, while he was sick, and cared for my mom as well, and I was pregnant. But when I had the baby, some people get crazy shocked by this. When I had the baby, I had my dad in the room when I was in labor, and what we did is we sat him right behind my head, right here, with this little, like, you know, oxygen machine, and he was right behind my head, and he couldn't see anything, right, but he had the best shot, you know what I mean? And so he was there when it happened. And I remember my mother-in-law was there, my mom was there, my dad was there, and then my father-in-law was like out behind the curtain, and he kept saying, "Ken, make sure you stay behind the curtain." And he kept like screaming at my father-in-law to stay behind the curtain. It was just hysterical. So I just remember those moments. I was like, oh dear Lord.
That's so special, though, and that's what he needed, and that's what's so important, that you were sensitive to that, and he got to witness that and be there. And how
Yeah.
special for your child,
I'm
too.
sorry?
How special for your child, too.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You
yeah, and
know?
and we named my first one after my dad as well. So yeah, it's fantastic. We have a couple of notes here. I have one that's crossed off. Elizabeth, do you not want me to read that, or
No,
do you
it
want me?
just sent the wrong way, so I resent it.
Oh, okay. So Cindy says, asbestos is being taken out of college where I work as part of a remodeling effort. Scary. We share an elevator with a removing effort. Nothing is shielded. My ex-husband exposed to it, working on brakes. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I would call OSHA as soon as possible. If the asbestos is not being removed by a certified asbestos abatement company and they're just going hacking into it, that's not safe at all. By law, it needs to be removed by an abatement company. So you could call the EPA or OSHA or somebody and report them. I definitely would, because that's not safe.
And they're not
There's
just
no
exposing
safe-
your husband, they're exposing a
Yeah.
lot of other people if it's in an
Yeah.
elevator.
So I would definitely blow the whistle on that if you're able to. That's not safe.
We actually had my high school. There was a fire in my high school, and they had to do asbestos abatement because it exposed the asbestos that was inside, the classrooms and stuff. And they did that, and I remember it being very serious. Of course, if it's at a school,
Yep.
they've got the space suits on. And then when we moved to this home, oh, wait, what were you going to say, Heather?
Oh, asbestos is in so many commercial buildings and anything built before 1980. It's everywhere, schools and colleges and hospitals and.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Why don't you expand on that to give people at home some idea of how prevalent it actually is?
Well, okay, so people are stunned to realize that asbestos is not banned in the United States. People think, oh, it was banned back in the late 70s, early 80s. No, that ban was actually struck down. So it is not banned. It is still used commercially. It's still imported to the tune of, something like 4 million tons per year. So we're still importing it. We're still using it. It's still legal. And it's a tragedy, and it's a travesty that that's still happening. We're one of, a handful of developed countries that has not banned the use. England has banned it. Australia has banned it. Europe, for the most part, has, but yet here in America is, not banning it. So it's found in a lot of commercial type buildings, schools, hospitals, office buildings, the World Trade Centers. That is a whole nother show in of itself.
Wow.
World Trade Centers fell billions of tons, tons and tons of asbestos was in the air and exposed thousands upon thousands of people. And, unfortunately, we're going to start seeing the repercussions of that in healthcare, where a lot of people that were in Ground Zero are going to be sick. But so you just have to be, know when your building was built, know where it could be: ceiling tiles, floor tiles, insulation, drywall, that sort of thing. If there is construction going on, I would be leery about, make sure it's sealed off and that the renovation is being done correctly. Yeah. So anything basically.
Yeah, so let's talk about people's homes then. So, I know that, people always want to remodel their kitchens or remodel their something. If the house is older than 1980, you want to get this checked, right? And so what would you do?
If you suspect there's asbestos, you can look in the yellow pages under asbestos abatement, and you'll get hundreds of companies. Or you can check with your local health department, and they can help direct you in the right direction to find a certified asbestos company. If you suspect there's asbestos, have it tested before you go tearing into it. A lot of popcorn ceilings, which, everybody hates their popcorn ceilings, so they think nothing of going in and scraping it off. That, a lot of times, was asbestos. Like I said, drywall, a lot of drywall. Insulation, vermiculite insulation is in millions of homes throughout the United States. And that insulation looks like granules of gravel. And that comes from Libby, Montana, and the vermiculite mines up there, and it is contaminated with asbestos. So you need to call an asbestos abatement company. Do not do it yourself. Do not attempt to do it yourself. Call somebody qualified and have them taken care of it. Either have it abated or have it encapsulated. As long as asbestos is not disturbed, as long as it's left alone and not, as they call, friable. Friable is when it's cracked or when it's broken up, and when the fibers get airborne, that's when it's dangerous. As long as it's intact and it's not disturbed, then it's fine. And then they can encapsulate that, or they can, abate it, whatever works best with your needs. So, professional, it's the best way to go.
Yeah, we did. We when we bought this house that we're in right now, there was a piece of asbestos about this big in the, and I, from living through that shock, when we bought a new house, I'm like, all right, get the place tested. So we had them pay, the other people pay to get an asbestos abatement company come out here to look if there was, and they found asbestos, which I had that feeling, you know what I mean? When you got that feeling, go with it. And they found it, and so we had the guys come out in spacesuits and remove it.
Yep.
So when you say that there's another way that they can remove it or they can contain it, what's
encapsulate it? Yeah,
what's that?
Cover it up so you can't get to it. Cover it up. Like if you have a tile floor. In our house, we have a tile floor in the upstairs. We just remodeled our attic area, which is now that's where I'm sitting. Like now my bedroom. And the floor was these 9x9 asbestos tiles. And what we did is we covered it up and we put a hardwood floor over it.
Gotcha.
And, we covered it up with the plastic, the barrier, and then we put a hardwood floor over it. So is it 100% safe as getting it abated? No, but still I can't get to the asbestos floor. It's covered and it's encapsulated. So that is another thing to do. And it's not being disturbed. You can't get to it. So it's a floating floor, so it's not nailed into it. And it's safe. So that was something that we did up here, and that's another thing that you can do. Or they can cover it up with, other types of products or something. But an abatement company can make that call.
And what I don't remember, how much does it typically cost an abatement company to come out and check for you?
A lot of them will do like a free consultation. I had some asbestos tape on one of my ducts, and therefore I wanted to have my ducts cleaned, but the duct company was like, nope, we don't touch it, there's asbestos tape. So I had that abated, and they came out and looked at it for free, but when they did the actual abatement, it was about $5,000. It's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not cheap. I remember it wasn't cheap. I think ours was like $3,000 or $4,000 or something like that.
So, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what could happen.
Cancer. Yeah. A drop in the bucket compared to cancer. It's kind of like the idea we always talk about, spending the extra money on better food, organic food, because, it's kind of like healthcare, preventative care. It's early for you. Pay for it now or pay for it later. I'd rather pay for it now.
Yep.
So this is something to be concerned about for people who are remodeling. This is something to be concerned about. How about if you're in an old building or an old office building or anything like that?
Old office building, if you see something broken up, or I would bring it to the attention of the building manager. And if nothing's being done, they've shut down schools around here. There was some tile that broke loose in a school, and they shut down the school for 3 days while they had it tested and removed. And so they thankfully took it very seriously. So I would speak with the building manager and the health department. If you see anything like that, if you see, a friend of mine used to come into work and there'd be white dust all over her desk from the ceiling, and it was ceiling tile that was basically falling apart, and she ended up with mesothelioma, and that's what.
Yeah. So we have another comment. This is from Cindy, from a reply from her question from earlier. She said, it is being removed properly, quote unquote properly, according to them, but it's on the 3rd floor and taken out by the service elevator that we all use. They spray foam on it, bag it, and take it out. We still share the airspace. I have a triple whammy. The 1960 basement floor tiles are asbestos, and we don't mess with them.
Removing asbestos, basically that's what they do. If maybe take a different elevator if you can while it's being done. As long as it's in the bags and it's spray foamed and contained when they put it in the bags, it should be safe.
Oh, okay. So the spray foam keeps it from being aerolized, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Some people think, oh, I'll just spray water on it, it'll be fine. No, there's certain things you have to be done. And I asked a friend of mine, I do a lot of work with the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, which is a nonprofit, and they have a yearly conference. And I asked a gentleman who speaks at that a lot, what do they do with the asbestos when they take it out? I mean, what do they do? See, asbestos is actually a mineral that is found in the ground. It's not manufactured. It's not a man-made material. It's mined. Actually, the state rock of California is serpentine, which is an asbestos. Isn't that interesting?
I had no idea.
So it's mined, and it's taken out of the ground, and it's got great properties. It's flame resistant. It's insulative. Unfortunately, the side effect is it kills people. And you know, it has this 30 to 40-year latency period as you're exposed, and then you get sick all these years later. And that's what's so insidious about it. But asbestos is very at home in the ground, and so what they do with it is they have to take it to special dump sites, and then they have to bury it like 3 feet in the ground. And they just bury it there and leave it there. Well, asbestos will never be gone completely because of the fact it's mined and it's in the earth. But we can control, you know, prevent the exposure in household things and office buildings and that sort of thing. So, but I would probably take a different service elevator. You know, if you do still, Cindy, you know, maybe call OSHA and have them checked out. You might be onto something if you're nervous about it. That's what I would do.
Follow your gut. That's what I say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen to what that voice is telling you. Always listen to that, because that will not, 99.9% of the time, that will not steer you wrong. You should always listen to what your gut says. So she's basically, essentially telling us that it's bothering her. There's a reason why it's bothering her. And so,
and
so
with the floor tiles, don't mess with them. Leave them alone. Put linoleum or put wood floor, something over them. That's your best bet. That's, like I said, that's what we did with our house.
That's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about New York City. Love to talk about New York City. I mean, Twin Towers come down. How many millions of people were exposed to the clouds and the dust and the, you know?
And the first responders. You know, the first responders, some of them have already died from cancer.
Mesothelioma?
Not specifically mesothelioma, but from cancer, and some of them had so much debris in their lungs that they can't work, and thank God they're protected. There was an act that was passed called the Zubrota Act that was passed to help the first responders. But yeah, a lot of them, unfortunately, are seeing severe health problems, and asbestos was everywhere in the Twin Towers, and when they came down, that cloud covered Manhattan, and it was, you know, they're still cleaning up from that, and they're still finding, you know, stuff from that. So we don't know what the repercussions of this are going to be, and we'll see. It's starting now that the people are starting to get sick, and because of the amount of toxins that were in those, and it wasn't just asbestos, but formaldehyde and all the, you know, even parts of bodies and everything that was in that cloud, the jet fuel and the, you know, stuff from the jets.
Right.
We're just starting to see the illness from that, and it's going to be an epidemic in New York from these people, these first responders and the people that were there.
So we're in year 2014, so we'll start to see a lot more of this, like 2020 to 2040, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Right about that time, because it's got an incubation period of a little bit. So how do you, okay, so if you feel like you've been somehow exposed to asbestos and you're concerned, what do you do?
Unfortunately, there is no tests to see if you know, have it or not, and that's what is really, they're working on it, but it's so hard
I think they've been working on it for like 8-10 years now.
Yeah, forever. But it's hard to come up with a specific test to see if you haven't been exposed or not, because the fibers are microscopic.
Right.
Pay attention to your health. If you have symptoms like weight loss, unexplained weight loss, if you have a dry cough that's non-productive, if you
like it's walking pneumonia type of cough.
Yeah, but you're not coughing anything up.
Okay.
The dry cough that is just non-productive is what they call it. Shoulder pain, back pain. If you have gastrointestinal things that are unexplained.
Oh, gastrointestinal.
Because of the peritoneal, the kind that's in the belly. Basically my exposure was in my lung, but there's also, like I said, the subset, which is the belly kind.
Okay.
But if you think you've been exposed, what you could do is go to your doctor and have a baseline CT scan to look for anything. And then you can probably have this repeated every 2 or 3 years to see if there's any changes. And if there is any changes, if there happens to be a development of something, you've caught it early. But you can talk to your doctor, your healthcare professional, and tell them, what, I think I've been exposed to asbestos. This is preventative maintenance that I want to do. And you may end up having to pay for it out of your pocket, thanks to our lovely healthcare system. A lot of companies don't want to pay for it. But, $1,400 for a CT scan for peace of mind, I think it's okay.
Right.
But that way they can, they have a baseline, kind of like a mammogram. You'll have a baseline to compare to every few years if you are really, really worried about it and you don't want to wait for the ticking time bomb. So the good thing is there's more survivors now than there ever has been. I know 13, 14, I know a 20-year survivor. And these are people that are living full, wonderful, productive lives. They're not lying in bed miserable. They're out there enjoying life. A friend of mine just went to Africa and went on this great safari with, this fundraising thing that she does. So, and she had the peritoneal, the kind that's in her belly. And she's 7 years old.
How did they treat her?
Surgery. They do a surgery called HIPEC, which is short for heated interperitoneal chemotherapy, something like that. But basically, they cut open the belly and they remove the cancer. There's a tissue called omentum, which is like the fatty tissue on your belly, and they remove that.
Right.
They remove the affected area with any visible cancer that they can see, and then they pump you full of chemotherapy, like they do with my chest. They do that in the belly. A lot of times people have to have a colostomy bag if it's in their intestines. So they have the colostomy bag for a while, and then they get everything put back together in a few months. And each individual case varies. And
right.
The doctors will do, whatever, they'll gear the treatment towards each individual patient. There's no one-size-fits-all in this. It's different for everybody.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. So where are the best hospitals and doctors around the country for this?
There's a organization, another organization that I deal with called the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation. And also where I blog through, mesothelioma.com. We've got a listing of doctors and medical centers throughout the United States. Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, where I went, has the International Mesothelioma Program, one of the top in the nation. Sloan Kettering in New York City. A lot of them are East Coast because of the shipbuilding that went on there. And mesothelioma is much more predominant East Coast than it is West Coast.
Gotcha.
There is a mesothelioma center in, I believe, San Diego. Or San Diego or Los Angeles. That's quite good with a doctor there. Texas is another great place. My surgeon just moved to Texas with Baylor University, and he's working to get a mesothelioma program going at Baylor in Houston. There's also MD Anderson, which is phenomenal. National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C., top-notch. But yeah, the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation and mesothelioma.com have great listings of where to go for these specialists. And that's what I would recommend if you find yourself diagnosed, is find a specialist and somebody who knows how to treat it. University of Chicago had a Kindler, so there's doctors in the Midwest too. So
how long is the incubation period for this disease?
anywhere from 10 to 50 years. And that's what's so crazy about it, is depending on the person and the amount of exposure, mine was about 20 to 30 years. So I was exposed when I was 8 or 9 years old. I was diagnosed when I was 36. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's, that they think that the asbestos, you breathe it in, you ingest it, and it lays there dormant, and it causes like friction. It works its way out of the organ into the lining, and it gets stuck there, and it causes the friction, and it causes those cells to mutate.
Wow.
And that's where they think, they don't know for sure, but that's kind of the action that they think it takes.
And then someone was asking me the other day, they're cancer cells, you get lumps, right? And this isn't one of those lumpy instances. Can you explain to them a little how it looks and how it's different in the body, so that, doctors could possibly be overlooking it and not seeing it?
A lot of times it doesn't show up on an X-ray. People think, if I have cancer, it'll show up on an X-ray or whatever. No, it doesn't. A lot of times what it looks like is a rind on an orange, like an orange peel. It covers the lining of the lung like a lichen on a rock. It doesn't form like masses, like tumors, like you would think, like big bumps and lumps. But what it does is forms this like rind and this hardening of the mesothelium, and so it presents itself in a much different way than traditional tumors do, and it does the same thing in the belly. It's just a smattering of these teeny tiny little lumps, teeny tiny tumors like an orange rind all over the surface. So it does not present itself like a breast cancer or a regular, like a tumor, one would think. So, and that's
if it could become gastro, if it could be lung, if it could, if it's covering your organs, it could present itself in a lot of different types of ways.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also asbestosis, which is like a precursor, which is a hardening of the lining. It actually turns almost to like a scar tissue. So it's hard to breathe because it's not moving and stretching like it should be. And asbestosis a lot of times will turn into mesothelioma later, unfortunately.
Right. So we've got kidney disease, asbestosis, mesothelioma, and several other cancers, all related to asbestos. And so it's really interesting. Heather was talking about earlier about how asbestos isn't illegal, and she's absolutely right. The EPA tried to make it illegal, and basically was struck down by the Supreme Court saying you can't do that. And basically the reasons for that is we actually have very, 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 very lax chemical laws in this country that protect the citizens. They're kind of more created to protect industry than they are to protect us for our human health. And I know there's a lot of people that are, lobbying on, Washington right now to tighten those things up. I mean, and asbestos is one of the examples that they use all the time. It's like, for crying out loud, guys, nobody wants to touch it. We all know it's deadly. We all know it's going to kill people. We all know, and yet we can't do anything about it. And I know that the EPA themselves are very frustrated because they would love nothing more than to make this stuff go away, and they can't. And one of the things that we need to do as citizens, as moms, is to make sure that our elected officials know that this is something that's important to us, and this is something that we care about and we're thinking about when we vote. And it's actually very important. And so things like the issue of asbestos also relate back to all kinds of things, like your personal care products having things in them that are banned in Europe. I mean, it's the same idea, guys. It's things that we're able to spray on our food that's illegal in Europe. Like putting having artificial food dye in children's food, and that's not it's all the same type of issue that our country kind of allows, and in other countries they ban. And the interesting thing, Heather, the way I look at it is, where in Europe, when you have socialized medicine, they don't make mistakes because they know they have to pay for them in the end. And it costs so much more money in the end when you have to pay for those mistakes than in the beginning just to prevent them. And in the US, all that liability, instead of being put on the government, is put on us, on the backs, on our citizens. And it's not necessarily like I'm saying that socialized medicine is the way to go. I don't necessarily think that. But what I am saying is that it creates a very different mindset of how you look at public health. And it's just, and for us, it's like, you know, liability, let them figure it out. Let the courts deal with it. Let the companies, let the citizens deal with it. And we'll just sit back here and just kind of watch it happen, you know, and that's essentially what's happening. And so, but I do really think that this generation, you know, your generation, my generation, I know for sure my kids' generation, things are definitely going to be changing, because you see, you know, just the idea that kids think that organic is the coolest thing since sliced bread. Well, having organic be cool makes me happy. You know what I'm saying? Because that's going to happen, baby. Yeah. You know, that's kind of like what the 60s were like, you know, with our parents and how things changed socially. You know, so even though like all of these things are happening, I really feel like our generation is the one that puts the light on it, and then the generations that come after us clean up the mess. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're fixing it. But our job is to shine a light on these things so brightly that people can't not look and go, wait a minute, this is just wrong. And, you know, you can't continue to let it happen. And that's essentially, you know, what we have to do.
You know, in asbestos, mesothelioma is so much thought of as an old man disease. Or, oh, I saw a commercial about that on TV, and it's so not about that. It's about real people, young, innocent people. The fastest growing demographic of patients is young women. We're the fastest growing demographic of mesothelioma patients. And the reason for that is we're a generation of daddy's girls. You know, our parents worked with it. And we're surviving. We're making noise. And I'm not the only one out there doing things for awareness. I mean, I'm trying to rattle the cages as much as possible. Because until people stand up and take notice, nothing's going to happen. And so I really am honored, and thank you for having me on here, because it's something I'm passionate about. Without awareness, without people knowing, nothing's going to happen. And it's become a global movement with the ADAO, the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization that I work with. It's become a global movement. Asbestos is not just a problem in the U.S. It's an epidemic in Australia. In Europe, in England, asbestos does not naturally occur in England. All the asbestosis and all the mesothelioma in England was brought in and imported. So everything that asbestos was used for was imported, and it was man-made in that country, and all the illness could have been prevented, and that's what's so maddening. It's 100% preventable. And because of lax regulations, and because of the government not doing anything, and because big industry, and it's all about money, is not, you know, the regulations aren't happening, people are dying needlessly, and that's what's so infuriating. I've lost 2 friends in the last 2 weeks to it. And I've lost more friends in the last 8 years than have lived. And it gets harder every time. My friend Lisa that just passed away, mother of 4, she was in her early 40s. My friend Janelle passed away a year ago. She was in her late 30s, left behind a son and a husband. It shouldn't be happening, and it shouldn't be this way, and we shouldn't be getting sick. But unfortunately, that's not what.
So why is it more women than men right now that are getting it? Young women as opposed to young men? Or
I don't know. If I knew the answer to that, I could live in Europe where it's banned. You know. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. If the cell type is more susceptible, we just don't know. But women also seem to fare better with the surgeries and the treatments than men.
Oh, interesting. Well, we just live longer and we're more durable. And they kind of, it's kind of like, you know, like in bed, right? They poot out early, and we're just like, we got some more to us, right? Not like that's my experience or anything, but I've heard, you know.
You know,
But no,
men get a cold and you think they're dying. Women get cancer and we still take the
oh.
kids to school.
Oh, I know, and they're laughing about it like you are and calling it names and stuff. You know, when you were saying that, it reminds me like I was living in Europe over the summer and or not Europe, China over the summer, and you're told, you know, don't drink the water, don't drink the water, don't drink the water. But what they don't tell you is the street fruit is injected with water to make it heavier. So I was drinking the water the whole time in China for like 3, 4 months. And I came home with a friend, and I named my friend Fred. I named my friend. So when you said that,
Yeah.
I was just like, that's so awesome. She named her
Oh
friend.
my gosh.
Yeah, so if you ever go, don't go to an Asian country and eat the street fruit that's like a watermelon or like really, I mean, I'm just telling you, because you wonder, you're like, how did the watermelon get to be this heavy? Oh.
Because they fill it full of the water you're not supposed to drink.
Exactly.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, you're so good. I was like, because I was drinking, so, okay, this is me, guys. Remember, this is like, you know, 10, 15 years ago. I was drinking soda the entire time because I didn't want to drink water. I didn't want to drink ice. I didn't want to drink anything. And so they give you soda in a warm can. There's no cold. There's no cold. No, and it's not what you think it is. It's because if you're having a hot meal, you don't drink a cold soda with a hot meal. That is not healthy. And so they will not give it to you. Even if you request it, they'll be like, no, are you crazy American? And well, maybe that's because I was living in a like super Chinese area, you know, where there were no Americans. They would just say no, and they would say, you know, I'm crazy in Chinese and explain to the person next to me why, and then they would just walk away. And I'd be like, but I just want a cold soda, not a warm soda, a cold one. And I suffered through all that warm soda because it's nasty when it's warm. It's nasty now when it's cold, but like,
Yeah.
and I still had a friend.
Yeah, I don't want to go there. No thanks.
And the other thing we're saying about women versus men, when men and women are put in survival situations, it's usually the men that give up first and want to kill themselves. And the women are the ones that, are you freaking kidding me? You know, it's like they were freaking out at first, but once they get into it, the guys are like, oh, and the girls are like, you know, pick up your bootstraps and shut up and it's just the way we are. I think that's how we're made.
You know, going through this, it's like my husband was the caregiver, you know, and that's such a role reversal in most of the situations. Because usually it's the wife with the husband being sick.
Right.
And I'm so independent. I go to Boston for my checkups, and you see the men there with their wives and their entourage of wives and daughters and son-in-laws, and here I am by myself. And I started going to my checkups on my own from the beginning. It just doesn't make sense to spend the money for 2 plane tickets for him to sit there and twiddle his thumbs and, you know, get the news. Like, I'll call you if anything changes. But, you know, men like to have that, you know, they like to have their wives there, or the wives feel the need to be there. You know, and I'm really thankful. My husband was an awesome caregiver, and he would kick me in my ass when I started getting pouty or started getting, you know, upset about something. He would be like, Lily needs you. And so having a man's perspective as a caregiver was really kind of cool. So we might bash on him, but let me tell you, he was such an important part of my battle and me getting through it that I couldn't have done it without him. So, although I hate it when he gets sick, let me tell you, it drives me nuts. He gets a cold, he feels like dying. I'm like, yeah, I had cancer and I didn't act like you. Oh. But he knows it, you know.
I keep hearing that same story from women all across the United States when their husband gets snipped. And they always hear the same story. They're on the couch for like a week, going with the you know with the ice going, oh, like a whole week. Every time.
Watermelon through the whole size of a grape. Don't tell me what it's like.
I know. My epidural for the last baby didn't even work. Okay, I mean, come on.
Okay.
my girlfriend, one of my girlfriends, her husband did have a really bad situation with, I know we're totally going off in left field for this, but his left testicle got infected and swelled up to the size of a grapefruit. And he's telling us about this at a Facebook conference, and it was like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I'm not going to say his name because you guys might know who he is. So he's telling us about this, and he's all, do you want to see the picture? Do you want to see the picture? My husband and I was with my husband, and my husband looks at me, and I look at my husband, and I'm like, it's like, I got it right here on my phone.
No, thank you.
No.
Yeah,
Okay. You don't want to see a picture. You don't want to see something graphic. My wife blogged about it, and what she did was instead of putting the actual picture on the front of her blog, because that would not be a good thing to put on her blog, but instead of that, they put a grapefruit on a bowl, like on a plate, and like said this is the exact size, and took a picture of that grapefruit on the plate and said it's this size, right? And then they put that in. So he showed us a picture of the blog post with the grapefruit just so that we could see how big it was.
Oh my God.
And then of course after my husband hears the story, he's like, I am never ever getting this done. Ever.
Oh jeez, it doesn't happen to everybody. Come on.
I said,
1 million.
So now this is my problem. Like, what is this?
It's so
not
funny.
my problem. Why does this have to be my problem? Men. Okay. Well, we had some laughs. This was a great story. I'm going to give you, Heather, the last word, the final word. Oh, we got to do a giveaway. We're doing a giveaway for a $25 Home Depot gift card. And you have to promise me if you buy this gift card, if you win this gift card, you're going to do something intelligent with that money, not something stupid. Okay, so you're not going to buy a hammer and like whack some things down where you potentially could, expose yourself to asbestos. Just that happens. Right. Something cool. Buy a do it yourself book. I don't know, but then call somebody about the asbestos first. So the password that we're creating for this is Heather. So all caps, HEATHER, Heather, all caps. That's Heather's name in all caps. And so that's our secret word for today to win the grand prize. So, and I'm giving you, Heather, the final word.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks again for having me on here and helping bring this to light. I think it's so important to tell people about the dangers of do-it-yourself, and because so many of us want to do it. And just be smart. If you think asbestos is present, don't do it yourself. Hire somebody. Have it checked out, and be careful. Your life may depend on it. And we've got some great resources, like I've mentioned during the podcast. There's an infographic at asbestosdiseaseawareness.com. That's a picture of a house that has where asbestos may be. I don't know. I have it. I don't know if showing it would be very good here, but
I posted the link too.
Okay. This is the infographic, and it tells you where in a house asbestos might be, and that's a really valuable resource to have. And there's also links to different government agencies that can help you out on there. And, if you find yourself with a mesothelioma diagnosis, reach out for help. There's incredible amounts of help and peer support out there. I'm always willing to talk to people and love walking people through that scary, scary time. It's what my passion is, and I really ultimately want to help people, and so that's what this is all about, and I really, really appreciate you having me on here and helping me spread the word. This is amazing.
Well, Heather, remind everybody of your Twitter account so that they can get a hold of you.
Heather VSJ at Twitter, and you can Google my name, Heather Von St. James. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Google+, and then they'll put a link up to my blog, and I update the blog. Try to do it like once a month. I'm very active in the mesothelioma community, so I blog a lot about what I'm doing, and I'm actually raising money for the ADAO and doing a Miles for Mesothelioma walk run in September for Mesothelioma Awareness Day, September 26th.
September 26th.
I'm doing a 2K because I'm a wuss and I don't do 5Ks. But I'm going down there, and I'm going to celebrate Mesothelioma Awareness Day with my friends.
Right, you have like less of a lung. I think you have a good reason.
I have one lung. Yes, I have one lung, so I can do a 2K. So I'm looking forward to it. I love raising awareness and being active. It's really what I enjoy. So thank you again, and this has been so fun and such a pleasure to be on. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, we're really, really happy to have you on. So from all of us at the Mamavation community, we wanted to thank you, Heather, for coming on and giving us just a world of knowledge about mesothelioma and asbestos and what we can do to prevent it and what the reality is out there and just, all the actions that we can take because, we're never helpless about this. We never are. So thanks, everybody, for joining us on our Monday. We'll see you next Monday, same time, same place. Everyone, have a great week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.